go ahead and introduce yourself and show us what you've been working on.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Zaira, or aka Zai Codes. I'm the founder of Coderoots, which is an NGO and now a kind of web development agency in West Africa, in the Gambia. So yeah, thank you for inviting me here, and I'm here to kind of maybe bring some fresh perspectives and change some perceptions that people might have. So AI will wipe out our history is what I titled this talk. To give you a bit of context, so for the past 6 years, I've been working in West Africa, running an NGO, and my main goal was to sort of create change where most of the world was ignoring it. It happened during COVID, so while everyone was kind of in panic about the state of the world, I used that panic energy to try to kind of like change some of the power structures that caused the problems in the first place. That's how I kind of started working in that region. One of the key things to, I think we probably can agree on, is that the world's resources are fairly unbalanced in terms of how they're distributed. Some of us might know some of the historical reasons why that's also happened. But what's really important, and I'd be interested if people know about this, that in the time period, in the last kind of 20 years, global poverty has actually dropped quite significantly globally, mainly because of India and China developing. But in Africa, it's actually increased quite significantly in that same period. So why is the question. So does anyone actually know what that could be? Why is it that it's the only region in the whole planet that's actually significantly, or has increased at all in poverty?
Exploitation.
Yes, kind of, but that's, yes.
I don't want to read up the slide.
you can, oh yeah, you're good, you're smart one. You saw that it's actually on the slide. Go on then.
Well, as you said, yeah, exploitation with high interest loans are obviously not great.
Let's go on the high interest loans.
Conflict isn't good either, and yeah, lack of security is, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, conflict is one of those points because where you have conflict, you have more poverty. Just that is the bottom line. High interest loans is a very interesting one. They actually recently did research that the amount of aid that goes into Africa is less than the interest that they have to pay on loans that they've got from countries around the world to help them develop. So the whole system is really, really not in their favor. And yeah, I call it resource robbery. You might want to name it something else, but we all know what that's talking about. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack, but needless to say, African technologists are kind of bracing themselves for the impact of rapid technological advancement, and specifically with AI. So yeah, it's evolving rapidly, and I know that there's a lot of positives to it. I mean, I'm a software engineer. I've experienced plenty of positives about having AI in my life again. But obviously they're worried about the impact it's going to have on their homelands. One of the key things to note here is that Africa is a consumer of AI technology, but it's not a producer. And so what that is creating is that same imbalance. So we have the imbalance from kind of like the previous economic times. Now we have another imbalance where they are consuming but not producing. And that has serious long-term consequences. Being on the losing end of that power equation again, but this time in terms of knowledge. And I think all of you are learned enough in technology to know what that can mean. So it's developing faster than many African countries can keep up with. One example is we have something called the Malabo Convention, which is a cybersecurity framework for Africa. But only 15 countries have managed to adopt it. And Africa's got over 50 countries, I think it is. I think I'm right in saying that. So it's, it's quite 25% of the countries have been able to do that because it's a lot, and most countries don't even have the infrastructure to really even conceive about all of this stuff. There's another body called the African Cybersecurity Alliance, and a few years ago in their summit, there's a lot of fear around AI and the threat to their kind of culture and their society because of the fact that, ultimately, it's not just that the AI tools are created in the West, but most of the data being fed into it is also Western or kind of Western perspectives. So there was a kind of fear around that, and I'm sure some of you have heard of like the data bias. When you type in things about Africa or Islam or things like that, then you might see things that you really would find offensive. There's a lot of fear around that. That's something that obviously a lot of countries want to address. One point that I wanted to raise was one way that Africa is kind of leading in a way that other countries aren't, and a really critical point is that in recent times we've seen a lot of Western governments kind of scramble to kind of create policies, or companies hire loads of moderators to kind of control some of these things that I'm talking about. So, in the West we kind of went with the let's just run with it and promote it and get loads of business going, but then not actually think about the long-term consequences, which is what's happened, and now people are kind of scrambling to change that. But because African countries have been thinking of it from the other angle of kind of protecting themselves, that's meant that some of the frameworks that they've come up with to protect themselves is actually quite leading, like globally. So an example of that is in the Gambia where I was working, they have something called the Conformity Assessment Framework, where they kind of ensure that every piece of technology that's entering the country is thoroughly checked for spyware and hidden algorithms, because they're kind of in that zone of trying to protect themselves from unseen digital influences. AI will wipe out our history. This is a quote that a senior African cybersecurity official said to me a while ago, and it really, really stuck with me because I think it just said very loudly and clearly a lot of stuff about the concerns about AI bias, about Western dominance, about their vulnerability as well. So I think, hopefully this is going to stick in your mind a bit. Just to talk to you a little bit about the work that I've been doing there in Africa. So when I started Coderoots, it was with like a mission, which was just to close the technology gap. And the way I saw that, which people think I'm crazy about, is rather than investing where the infrastructure already exists, go where it's hardest. Because if you can solve the problem where it's hardest, then you can solve it anywhere. It's a really hard job to do that as well, and it has been a struggle. But that was the kind of vision of it. But then over time, what I realized is that you can teach people skills, and you can kind of even link them up to opportunities. But you also have to teach them how to protect themselves. If they're entering into the global tech world, they also need to know how to navigate it safely. A really important thing actually in Africa is it's very vulnerable to some of the dangers of modern technology, AI. Poverty is greater there, so that is again going to always increase. When you don't have money, you're more likely to believe things about people that are going to be helping you. That's kind of how it's always going to work. Scams are more common there because they're easier targets, and also the repercussions are less because there's no one protecting them. So what actually, with the support of Gadfly, I did recently this year is run a cybersecurity training program across different regions in Gambia, at a school, at a village. That was the last picture you saw there. And at the university as well. And we've created a handbook, and that's something we're going to distribute across the country. But one thing I just want you to picture is that, like, you've got a rural Gambian village where they basically don't have computers. They've never really had computers. This village, like some villages have computers in the school, but this village didn't have that. We actually brought computers to that school. So they don't really have any kind of knowledge of technology, but they all have phones, and they all have access to the internet, and they all have TikTok, and all of those things. So, like, you have people who have access to the global tech world, but with no knowledge around that kind of protection part of it. So if someone sends them a message asking for personal information, they don't know how to identify that that's a danger. Or a recent problem was like deepfakes, people impersonating celebrities or politicians endorsing like a specific website that they should go on. So these are kind of vulnerabilities that I'm talking about. So yeah, this work that I'm doing, yeah, it's good, but actually it's still only kind of scratching the surface. And what that official said about AI will wipe out our history. I don't really feel he's exaggerating from his point of view. If what he's saying is we don't take action to protect our culture and our values, then that could all be overwritten by algorithms basically that don't see us. So for me, the only solution is that, you know, I keep doing what I'm doing, keep equipping people. This is from the university session. Equip the right people with the right skills, basically, so that they can, you know, build alternatives and have their like kind of seat at the table. So yeah, that's everything from me. I'm Zaira. If you want to get in touch with me, that's my email, my website, my Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to support us, please do. If you want to ask me any questions, yes, please, I would love that. Yeah, thank you.